Yeah. We call this October 2nd, 2025 meeting of the AMAT Technical Advisory Committee to order. It is 1:01 p.m. Would you do the roll call for us, Aaron, followed by the public involvement announcement?
Okay, Member Rudolph. Here. Welcome back. Member Duber for member Lindemood. Here. Member Alimi.
Present.
You, Member Dawad.
Present.
You, Member Boland. Here. Member White's on his way. Member Coy.
Here.
Member Hong for Member Kohlhaas.
Present.
Member Babb.
Present.
Member Keegan.
Present.
Sorry, a second. And then Member Jager.
Present.
Jim. Thank you.
Yes, I'm here.
Just making note of this point. We have a quorum. Next, the public involvement. Welcome to the AMAT's Technical Advisory Committee meeting. Public comments are welcome and encouraged. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. After the committee discusses each item, members of the public will be invited to comment. Housekeeping items for virtual attendees. Please keep your cameras off unless speaking. For those attending by phone, please press *6 to mute or unmute yourself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. First item is to approve the agenda. Do we have a motion for the agenda? Move to approve, okay, by Mr. Boland.
Second.
Second by Ms. Babb. Do we have any changes that are needed to the agenda? Okay, hearing no changes, are there any objections to approving the agenda? Okay, hearing none, the agenda is approved. Next item is approving the meeting minutes from August 7th, 2025.
Move to approve.
Moved by Ms. Babb. Seconded by Mr. Rudolph. Do we have any changes that are needed to the minutes? Hearing no changes, are there any objections to approving the minutes? Okay, hearing none, the August 7th, 2025 minutes are approved. On to action items. Action item 5A, the 2027 to 2030 funding program, or TIP. And is that one that you'll be taking on, Aaron?
Yes, I will. Okay, everybody. So as you know, we are developing our new funding program, 2027 through 2030. That's federal fiscal year 27 through 30. So we've had a couple of work sessions on this, but I just want to kind of go over how this all came about. So staff started the effort by reviewing the previous or the current TIP, the 23 through 26 TIP, carried forward any project that is anticipating needing funding that's underway. So like Academy Vanguard or other projects like that. And then looked at the 2050 MTP for projects, selected projects from the top 14 to 15. So top 14 complete streets, top 15 active transportation projects that were possible to start design efforts in the 27 through 30 funding program. So the staff selected a few projects. We really focused on projects that could be considered maybe a little easier to deliver and less expensive than the existing projects we have, since a number of the projects in the 23 through 26 funding program are very expensive. We want to recognize that there's going to be some continuing needs into the next TIP as well. So staff updated the project tables for tables 2 through 6, which is AMAT's available funding. And then we were given information from the Department of Transportation, Muni PM&E, Alaska Railroad, and Public Transportation Department for tables 7 through 10. I do want to note that while we were developing the new funding program, there were some projects that we were not able to recommend as staff to carry forward into the 27 through 30 years, just because of our funding limitations. So there are some projects that we are recommending being moved to the illustrative category. So these are ones that we talked about at the work session. So we have Rabbit Creek Road rehabilitation. That's a $28 million construction hit, and it's a little too big for what we have available on top of everything else. Potter Drive rehabilitation as well, with some changes to Spinard Road being delayed a year, and then Rabbit Creek being moved into 27. We needed to move some other projects around to free up funding for those projects that are already underway. And Potter Drive was one of those that got moved out. Same with Academy Vanguard Drive. And then Chugach Way rehabilitation is also the same. I will note Chugach Way rehabilitation, that project hasn't had a whole lot of work done on it at this point. I know the project manager has been unavailable for a little while and recently retired. So just wanted to remind everybody about that. There are some new projects that are being recommended based on the overview and from the 2050 MTP. And just as a reminder to everybody, the projects in the 2050 MTP are listed in priority order based on scores. So when you get past the projects that are already in the TIP and you start on the new ones from the MTP, it's all based on score. So we just went down the list from the top scoring on down of what was reasonable to be able to fund as part of the next TIP cycle. So the first one was 15th Avenue rehabilitation, I Street to Cordova. Another one is the Denali Street Complete Street Project, Fireweed Lane to Tudor Road. It also includes improvements at the intersections of Fireweed and Tudor if needed. Then there's some active transportation projects. We have the Tudor Road to Roosevelt connection. Again, that's a spinoff from a larger scale project that was looking at providing an active transportation connection from Tudor to Northern Lights along the railroad right away. Looking at it, looks like that's going to be a little more complicated, and maybe we can save that for a later date. And this one was kind of a more simple project to get done to make that connection in that area. And then there's the Hyder Pedestrian Boulevard project. I want to note something on this one. I made an error, and I think it caused some confusion, so I want to apologize. We had originally, I had originally put a project in there that was the Hyder or the Fairview Greenway Phase 1 project, which is basically going from 20th to 15th. That included a new greenway connection from the trail and included tunnels underneath Ingra and 15th to get over to Hyder. After a reevaluation by staff, we decided to recommend instead the Hyder portion itself, not the southern connection. And when I made that change, I didn't update the project name completely. So it came across as Hyder Greenway, and it should have been Hyder Pedestrian Boulevard, as it's spelled out specifically in the MTP. So staff updated the name of that project as well. It's not on this table here because I made an error, but I did want to point out that there are a couple of new plans that are in place. We, of course, have our MTP update, our safety plan update, and then we are adding in as recommendation a Muldoon Road corridor plan update. So if you may recall, there's a bunch of other corridor plans that are either underway or anticipated to start. Minnesota is underway, Minnesota IL is underway, but anticipated to be completed in the short term. And then we have Tudor Road and Northern Lights Benson that'll be starting next. AC was one that was anticipated to be started in 26. However, Minnesota is taking a little more time than anticipated to finish that project up, and we anticipate Tudor and Northern Lights are going to take a little bit longer than we originally anticipated to complete. So with that, staff is actually recommending a change to put AC into the 27 through 30 tip in the year 2029, and then have Muldoon Road corridor in 2027. A lot of that came about because of discussion at the work sessions where a number of committee members raised comments that they'd like to see Muldoon Road moving sooner rather than later. 2027 is probably the soonest we can get that started with all the other stuff that's going on. And I'll be honest, even with that 27 timeframe, it's more likely we'll obligate the funds in 27, but not actually start the project until 28. These corridor plans are take a lot to do with all the public engagement and all the analysis that needs to be done. So I think we were not as realistic as we could have been when we put these original projects into the 23 through 26 tip. So we're trying to be a little more realistic this go around. Let's see. Then we had some new projects added in as part of the National Highway System table, Table 8. There are 3 new ones. The Glen Highway Incident Management Traffic Accommodation Stage 2, so just a continuation of that existing project. Glen Highway Milepost 1 to 34 Rehab Stage 2, again a continuation of that project. And then an old favorite has come back, the Seward Highway O'Malley to Diamond Boulevard reconstruction. That was requested by DOT to be put back in. They are currently underway with I hope I don't say this wrong, but basically restarting the project and doing a purpose and need and kind of going from there of what that project's going to look like. So The rest of the tables were all updated based on information provided from the various agencies. There's no other real changes aside from that. And, okay. Pavement replacement. We all know that we had a fun discussion about pavement replacement at the work session. Staff only made one change to the pavement replacement table, and that is to remove the Northway Drive pavement replacement project. That was not a project that the municipality of Anchorage had on their list of priority at this point. So staff removed that. We didn't make any other changes to the pavement projects because staff doesn't really know what direction to head. There was some information and discussion talked at the last work session of, why are there so many in South Anchorage? Why is there not maybe more focused in, north area where a little denser population and higher ADT? A lot of this information is provided us by us as staff from DOT maintenance. These are the recommendations, community maintenance. We did get updated information from the municipality of Anchorage on their pavement replacement needs for roadway. And I sent that information all out to the committee members. There are 6 roads. 2 of them are already on the list. So if the committee members would like to update this list now, we would need to do that as part of the action taken today. Because our next steps are, if you recommend approval to release, the policy committee releases it for public comment. We're going to go through the interagency consultation process as part of the next steps and the air quality conformity demonstration development, and then release it for public comment in January. So we are kind of in need of getting this done at this meeting and then the policy committee meeting to keep us on schedule. That's all I had. I'm happy to help answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. One question on the pavement side. If projects swap out, does it need to go back through the air conformity determination if it's a different list on the pavement preservation side versus what's there right now? Does that?
So because pavement is exempt typically from air quality requirements because it doesn't rise to that level of impact, all we would have to do is just send a notice to the interagency team and let them know that these changes happened. There's no impact to air quality, especially if it's outside the air quality area of Eagle River, then there wouldn't be anything we had to do anyways, and we would just send notice and let them know of those changes. So that's also true with HSIP projects because they're typically exempt. We just have to keep them informed. Then they are the ones who make the decision on whether we actually need to come back for a full consultation or not. Typically on pavement projects, we do.
Okay. Perfect, thanks. Are there any other questions or comments from committee members? Go ahead, Luke.
Yeah, just throw out some comments there. I think a good briefing there. Thanks, Aaron, on the projects that are shown as illustrative there. Rabbit Creek, Potter, Academy, and Chugach. Those are all active design projects, though. Even though those are being shown as illustrative, there is probably opportunities for them to move them in or out of the program at a later date, depending on what other project. So those are not on hold by any means. Those are continuing to advance. And then on the Chugach, I think our statement there that we were doing what we could to keep that one moving there. We do have a consultant on board now, and so there's some progress, and that continues to advance as best we can with the resourcing that we've got. Going down to the table 8 changes there, those 2 Glen Highway projects, those are just stages of existing projects, those are not necessarily new projects. Then on O'Malley to Diamond, we just did have our first stakeholder engagement meeting here, I think it was last week. And we'll have continued involvement there on the scope of that project here moving forward. So revisiting what that project ultimately looks like.
Okay, thanks, Luke. Are there any other questions or comments from members of the committee?
I found something else I need to mention. It was discussed at the work session that on the illustrative list for the tip, we should keep that connection for the pathway from Tudor to Northern Lights along the railroad right-of-way, that non-motorized pathway. I forgot to add it to the list, so that would be one we will add to the list as well. Again, it's illustrative, so it's not going into the program, but there was a request to keep that on the list in case we want to fund it at a later date. So I apologize for missing that.
When we do our motion, do we need to include that in, or
You don't have to if you don't want to. I'll patch it as staff, but you're welcome to if you would like to.
And either way, it'll go to the policy committee.
Yes, correct.
Okay, other questions or comments from the committee? Okay. We'll move to questions.
Oh, oh, sorry. Yeah.
So it's the hand raised?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move to comments from the public then. So 3 minutes and let's start in the room. Are there anybody in the room who would like to make a public comment on this item? Okay, so we have one, so go ahead, Lindsay.
Go ahead. Is it okay if I'm over here?
Yeah, just speak up. It's hard to hear in the back.
Okay. So hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay Hyduk. I serve as the Director of Community Engagement and External Affairs for Neighborhoods Alaska. And I also serve on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. So you'll also speak to that later. But I just wanted to thank you all for really digging in and having such a kind of comprehensive overview of all these different projects. For me, it's really hard to follow when a project is moving forward and how, so I appreciate all the dialogue that does happen. And I just want to speak briefly to the Hyder Pedestrian Boulevard as a really key feature of our Reconnecting Fairview Corridor Plan. This is a plan that we're working on in partnership with the Fairview Community Council and have been working to advance solutions and reimagining the corridor along Gamble, Hyder, and Anchor Street. And having the project in the NTP and as alternatives within the Pell study. What we're trying to do in our corridor plan is take it a step further and are moving into this conceptual design phase right now. And we'll be kind of releasing different options and getting community feedback, including technical feedback from many folks who serve on our technical advisory committee. And we're also, with our corridor plan, really also focusing on the land use and reinvestment and revitalization for that corridor. So the improvements to this section are really key, we believe, in creating that reimagined corridor that is vibrant and healed from the decades of the highway connection. So happy to speak a lot more to it, but just recognizing that we are hoping to answer a lot of questions and have opportunity for a collaborative approach from the technical side as well as the community-led planning effort, which is what this corridor plan is itself. So just appreciate having the opportunity to have within the TIP and want to continue to speak to why it's such a critical piece for the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. I do have one question for you on that. Do you know about the timing of when the Reconnecting Communities study? You're looking at like the recommendations being complete, so like feed into.
Timeline for the plan is to have a final plan by mid to fall next year, so 26. And with that will be these conceptual designs that we are trying to get as grant ready, as really project ready, to then move into the design phase, but to really have that community-led input early on in this core planning process. So I believe the timing.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Any other comments from the public in the room? Okay, we can go online then. I see some hands online. So we'll start with Nancy, and you've got 3 minutes, Nancy.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Great. I'm with Rabbit Creek Community Council, and we did take note that the Rabbit Creek Road upgrade had been pushed out beyond 2030. We are concerned about that, so we will be submitting some comments in writing. We do note that there's still, and I don't have this table right in front of me right now, I'm sorry, but $5 million, I think it was, for 27 or 28 And wondering if that was for right-of-way acquisition. And I guess we would be concerned that if this project really has been pushed out 5 years, that right-of-way acquisition not proceed because that, diminishes the value of people's properties in the near term when the project is now uncertain. So, couple comments there. As you look at your budget, what is that 5 million in 27 or 28? Also, with regard to pavement replacement, Aaron commented that there had been discussion that there's too much pavement replacement in South Anchorage. Rabbit Creek Community Council would very much like the Old Seward Highway spur east of Powder Marsh to stay on the list. It's literally crumbling into the marsh with sheet flow across that stretch of road during runoff, peak runoff. So if we're going to retain that connection, it will need drainage and repaving. So those are a couple of quick comments, and we will have questions and further comments that we'll work through Aaron in the coming week. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Appreciate it. And the next public comment that I have is Johnny Hayes. You can come off mute and, yep, hear
Yes,
you great.
can you hear me? Excellent. Thank you all. My name is Johnny Hayes. I'm at the Anchorage Museum, landscape architect and on the technical advisory committee of the Reconnecting Fairview project. And just voicing my support for the reframing of the Hyder Pedestrian Boulevard, and that paired with the linkage of 15th Avenue, projected improvements there, really is in alignment with a lot of what the community is asking for. Having pursued a grant application with the municipality in alignment with some of the street upgrades and opportunities for economic redevelopment. Just want to voice my gratitude for including it on the list, helping to clarify and update the language so that it is more in alignment now with the intention of at least what I've heard from folks, as well as being on the committee. And so just wanted to share my support for that project staying in and appreciate the clarifications.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Johnny. Are there any other members in the room or online who'd like to make a comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, it then returns back to committee. What is the will of the committee?
Move to recommend to the policy committee a release for probably 45-day public comment period.
Okay, moved by Mr. Boland. Seconded by Mr. White. Kind of tie, but we'll go with Mr. White for this one. Okay, are there any amendments requested? I know I have a couple that I just from a wording standpoint of a few things. And I guess we also have the question of the pavement as well. But one of the ones that I was looking at is the Denali Street, Complete Street Project. Changing, instead of saying the wording where it says intersection, we're adding, I guess, adding active transportation facilities, to change it to say enhancing. There are some sidewalks already. Does adding mean leaving those exactly how they are? Just having some clarity about enhancing. And then the second change is to delete the line that says Denali Street will be reclassified from a minor arterial to a major collector. And the functional classification change will be included in the project design. Ideally, that's not something the project team should do. That's something the municipality should do. And we are doing some reclassification efforts. So my suggestion would be delete that from the project description. And ideally, we do it beforehand so that it's done instead of the project team like being in this situation of something that a municipality needs to do versus a project team doing. So, and if we rework some of the ways we do the functional class hierarchy, then some of what might be appropriate might actually change, because I know that the HDM is getting considered for some changes. So those are my thoughts. I could make that motion and hand the gavel off. Or
I move to amend the motion as noted. So including the changes to the word Denali, to the Denali Street project, and
it was just Denali Street.
just the what?
That was just Denali Street so far.
Okay, and if I can speak to that motion quickly.
Support.
We need a second.
Sure.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moved by member Bab, seconded by member Rudolph.
I support both of those changes and do believe that the rate classification is something that the municipality should address rather than the design team. So I will be voting in favor of that.
Okay, any discussion on that item?
I have a comment for, the reclassification language was added in because it wasn't done with Spinard. And it sounds like stuff at the Muni is being held up for reclassification for whatever reason. And so no offense, but we need to make sure that the project team accounts for the reclassification at the beginning. Even if they're not the ones doing it, we need to make sure that they're accounting that it is going to be a collector instead of an arterial. So I'm just giving you a heads up. If you remove it from here, you run the risk of it not being included as part of the description or part of the effort. I know Luke will probably contrary me on that, but that's what we're experiencing right now with Spinard. So I just figured I'd voice it and we see how it goes.
No, and actually, to Aaron's points there, I think that communication early on in the project is where that needs to happen. So I don't know if it's appropriate to have it in the description there, but how that gets communicated early on is key. So I don't know, I could go either way on the change here, but good to know at the offset of the project.
Yep, sure. And to speak to that a little bit, the description that says reconstructing Denali Street to include lane reductions. So even the fact that it's like reducing lanes, in effect, is accounting for, in my mind, sufficiently kind of what the character of the street is. A lot of what you get from a road classification, like, includes a variety of different elements. And I think what's captured in here, like, conveys, in my mind, the vision adequately. So that's my thoughts on that piece. But I mean, yeah, whether it's in there or not, I guess. I mean, if the HDM does come through and change some of our classification a little bit, and this is no longer the correct like terminology for the classification, but it's listed in the tip, is there any implication in that regard where we now wouldn't want this to actually be a major collector, but we'd want it to be something different through the HDM update process?
I would support an amendment to my amendment that maybe changes the language of that to something like the project team shall coordinate with the municipality to ensure that the road classification for Denali matches the project need prior to finalizing the design.
So, yeah,
Without, if anyone is interested in maybe changing that.
I guess the question is that making it too like convoluted versus just the simpler, like leaving it as it is and maybe having to make changes later versus taking it out and risking that if we don't do what we're intending to do with reclassification.
And that's why I support that motion or why I am making that motion, because the intent of the planning department is to reclassify to the appropriate reclassification for that road in collaboration with the traffic department. So I absolutely recognize the situation that we are in with Spinard and the discussion we're having about fireweed. But placing that responsibility on the design team rather than the municipality may not be the appropriate action.
Or specifying in this what the municipality will be doing
Mhm.
when it still needs to go through the process. And there are some decision makers that, you know, is this exactly how it's going to all roll out with whether the DCM changes or whether the, yeah. So,
And there are still some questions in my mind whether or not the reclassification to a major collector would actually provide those facilities that are described in the project description.
go ahead, Aaron.
You could adjust it to be flexible and reword it to be, the project team will account for any functional classification changes as part of the design effort. And then just, you don't have to say whether it's a major collector or whatever the design is, like that, I think is at least some kind of heads up that they need to pay attention to the classification and what is it anticipated on being, whatever it is at that point. That might be a good way to get out some of that specificity that I think is causing some concern.
I would be open to that friendly amendment.
So amended. I don't know if that, Lori, we're probably making a mess of this. Apologies.
Okay, so Member Bab and Member Rudolph, are you open for that friendly amendment? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so now the amendment before us is to change the word adding to enhancing and then deleting the last line and instead using the words that Aaron provided.
Forgotten. So we'll listen, it's that the project team will account for the classification. The team will account for the classification in the design.
Any
of
class
the project.
Yep. So
Yes. Do we want to say current classification or just say classification? Classification. I don't know, Lori, did you catch the wording I said?
These meetings are recorded, right?
We'll go back and
okay.
clarify that.
And so I guess with the amendments that provide for the scrivener's errors, like corrections. So, is there any opposed to the amendment regarding Nelly Street? Okay, hearing no objections to that amendment is approved. With regards to, yeah, one of the other, I guess, items that I would like considered is another one is the data. So on the table, safety improvement program, traffic count support, which is table 2. It currently has 370,000 a year. To be able to continue our count program as we have right now, we really need $500,000 a year. So I'm not sure if there's a good way to frame that. Is that something to address now? Is that thoughts on that, Aaron, I guess?
I mean, I'll let you know now, we have no extra money at this time. Unless we pull it from some other project. So we'd have to pull it from somewhere else. It's not that much more. It's only 130,000 a year. And we probably have some flexibility in the pavement replacement program to take the 130 for 27, 29, and 30. But 28, we're full up right now. I guess we could technically do a little more in 27 to cover 28. So instead of 130, do 260. So then you get a little bit more upfront, and then overall it'll equal the 2 million needed. So that could be a recommendation if you're interested.
Is it better to do that now, or can we like explore that through the?
Yeah, I don't see any reason why you couldn't do it now and make it, it's still a recommendation that goes to the policy committee, who will kind of ultimately decide whether they're okay with that or not. If you're not comfortable with the money coming from the motorized pavement replacement program, I would just need you to identify where you think the money should come from and provide that as part of your recommendation.
Okay. Sounds good. So I'll hand the gavel off to Mr. White so that I can make the motion. I move that the that funding be moved from the motorized pavement replacement program in the number of $130,000 per year in 2029 and 2030, and then 260 in 2027 to be able to make 27, 28 have that same funding source. Just to total the 2 million over the 4 years.
Give a second.
Second.
Any discussions? Any objections to the amendment? All right, not hearing any.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Amendment moves. We'll move it back to you.
Okay, sounds good. Are there any other amendments requested?
I'd like to make a motion for an amendment for the sake of discussion. And the amendment would be to remove the Seward O'Malley project from the tip. And I would have some questions for the project team before we vote.
Okay, a motion has been made by member Bab. Do we have a second? Okay, seconded by Mr. Rudolph. Want to explain? Have some
Yeah.
discussion?
Yeah, so this is for the sake of discussion. I am curious if the O'Malley Stewart Highway Improvements team has any comment on whether or not it would be useful for their purposes to either remove this or delay this project, so that there is more time to really refine what the purpose and need for the new effort is prior to this being on the tip in the future. Is there anyone from that project present who might be able to speak to that? I can see you back there working on your email. Do you want me to repeat?
Yeah, I think Sean Baskey can probably speak best to it regarding the stakeholder engagement that we're working on this. We are showing this in 29, which gives us time to revisit the scope. It is coming out of the NHS tables, so this isn't coming from the AMATS allocation. This is coming from DOT funding. So maybe Baskey can speak a little bit. Sorry to put you on the spot while you're multitasking.
I was just wondering if it would be of benefit to your team and the effort you're going through now to delay this further or remove it from the tip altogether, just to give you more time to refine your project and the need.
Sure. Yeah. So our expected timeline right now for probably having a rescoped project is probably summer of 26, maybe fall of 26. So, at that point in time, then we move forward with the CSS process, re-engaging planning and zoning, completing the environmental document and other things. So at a minimum, we're 5 years plus out from really engaging in those actions for construction. We might need additional design funding at some point in time, which I would need it in the TIP for that. And if we needed additional right-of-way funding, which I doubt, but if we needed funding again, I need it in the TIP for that. But the goal is to come back to the TAC, the policy committee, after some additional stakeholder working group work. So that way we can get some additional input from the community. Also do some additional open houses and other things. The core of the question, I think, was, is it okay to move it out beyond, the current TIP cycle? Yeah, but I might need it back in at a moment's notice within like a year of a certain date for additional design funding or something.
Okay, so the timeline in the TIP right now works for your purposes, more or less.
Yeah.
But the project description may change in the meantime.
That's fair. And
Okay.
I don't know what the construction funding that's shown in there right now is the best guess with information that we have at this point. Until I get through that process, I don't know what we're building to, have a better estimate to put in there and what date we could actually deliver it on. It's the best information we have at this time.
Can you state your name for the record?
Yeah, Sean Baskey, the head of the Surface Transportation and Highway Design Center, DOT in Central.
Thank you.
So I have a follow-up question. Is it safe to say that looking at the description as it is right now, where it says may include and that lists a number of different things, that the 50 million listed would not cover all of those?
I think the current estimate in there is just a WAG. It is the best estimate that we have for a set of proposed improvements that we believed at that time. So, yeah, if all those improvements were to be constructed, then it would be likely a different estimate. That's how we proceed on most of our projects is, in some document, it may include things that are less or more shown specifically in the TIP descriptions, because those aren't specific scope documents. Most of them.
I'm just recalling that I think it was 100 million at one point, full,
It was up to 120 million, and then we pulled out the diamond interchange at one point in time. We were going to revamp that. That got removed, but the STIP language at that time didn't change because it covered it, right? So there may be elements. There's not a commitment from the TIP or the STIP scope that every element is going to be.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks, Sean. Okay. Any additional discussion on this amendment?
I guess my recommendation would be to leave this in for now. Between now and 29, we're going to have this discussion multiple times based on the engagement that we're coming up against here. And again, it doesn't really impact the fiscal constraint that we're working on with the AMANS funding. So that'd be my recommendation.
Okay, so I know you said for purpose of discussion, are you wanting us to vote on the motion or?
No, I think I'll retract my motion if that's okay with my second, and it was mostly for the purposes of having that discussion on the record. So.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Member Babb. Are there other amendments requested to this motion? I guess the one that I'm wondering about is the pavement, having whether to have additional municipal streets included in the pavement. I know that's one that we got some information fairly recently, and I haven't had the time to fully vet it. But that's one of the items that it sounds like it would be helpful to figure out. But sounds like if we don't necessarily have a motion on that, then we might just have to wait until we've got a little bit more time to look into that in more detail. Okay. Hearing no takers on that. Any other motions or any other amendments?
I have a question for staff about the O'Malley, not the O'Malley, the Muldoon plan and the AC plan and the timing for that. Would you mind going over that portion of the tip again?
Yeah.
The timing.
So right now, we have 3 plans currently active, I guess you could say. Minnesota and IL, which is on the tail end of being completed. Then we have 2 more plans that are anticipated to be started pretty quickly, Tudor Road and the Northern Lights Benson. So those will take a couple of years to get done. The plan here is to then start Muldoon as the next one in 2028. So giving a year and a half or so for the other plans to move forward. That'll be, Minnesota will be done at that point, and that'll free up a little bit more space on James's plate to go ahead and maybe get the Muldoon started. And then give it another year or 2, and then AC will get started. And so that'll allow the Tudor and Northern Lights one to be finished. So it's to space it out a little bit more by a year and a half, 2 years, depending on when the funds are obligated, the RFPs let, the consultants on board, and everything gets started.
Okay. And your question for the TAC or your recommendation to the TAC on that is to leave it as you have it in the.
Yeah, with updating, which we already have caught, but it wasn't on this version, that the project phasing plan for Muldoon says 28, it should say 27.
Okay.
So Muldoon will be 27 and AC will be 29.
Okay, sounds good. Any other amendments? Okay, hearing none.
I actually also have another question.
Okay,
Sorry.
all right.
The Campbell Creek Crossing project. Would it be helpful to staff and DOT for that project description to be updated to include an at-grade option? The crossing.
Well, I'm meeting shortly with Municipality of Anchorage to talk about that project because there are some concerns. Overcrossing does have some anticipated right-of-way impacts. And so I want to meet with the community to kind of talk with them about what they want to move forward with. I think at that time, we'll have to come back with the committee if a change is recommended and bring that forward at a future date. So I think at this point, it's a little too premature because we don't really have a full decision that's made on that project. So I would recommend leave it as is.
Great, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Member Bab, but good questions. Go ahead.
So, see that the design team for Academy Vanguard is in the audience. I'm curious what it would do to the project. I mean, it's taking it off the schedule, but I know we're kind of moving at a pretty fast pace for 27 construction, so taking this off the list would include that. Curious if we can have some discussion with the design team on where they are in the status of the project. And
I'm Julia Hansen. I'm the project manager for DOT for the Academy Vanguard project. We just had our 30% design review and we're on schedule right now to begin construction in fiscal year 27. The biggest schedule risk on that project is right-of-way acquisition. And we have a somewhat aggressive schedule in order to meet this 2027 construction date. But we are starting right-of-way acquisition by the end of this calendar year. My thought is that if we move it to the illustrative list, there's still the possibility that we could be moving it back with a later amendment. And my intention is basically about this time next year, we should have a much stronger confidence in our schedule. And we'll be coordinating with AMAT staff as we proceed with this project to let them know, okay, we should be talking about moving this back into the TIP, just depending on how right-of-way acquisition goes.
And you have the funding you need for the right-of-way acquisition?
It's in the 2610, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion or amendments? Okay, I guess we're back on the motion as amended. Are there any objections to approving the motion as amended? Okay, hearing none, the motion as amended is approved. So we'll move on to the next action item on our agenda, item 5B, 2052 Transportation Plan MTP Resolution. That one that
Rhiannon will take over.
Okay, Rhiannon, go for it. Oh, Ms. Brown, go for it.
Hi, everybody. AMATS is in the beginning stages of the next federally required 4-year update to our transportation plan, the MTP. Before you, I have a resolution that has the key assumptions and parameters that we would like to guide this update. So just to give you sort of the nitty gritty, and I can answer additional questions. Although the river is designated as a limited maintenance area, in this update, we do not need to have modeling analysis, but we will have a demonstration prepared and adopted in this update. The horizon year for this is 2052, though there is potential to change that to 2055 to stay consistent in the future. We will continue to show that the MTP is fiscally constrained. And we will also be updating the travel demand model from the 2050 update to show the latest socioeconomic land use data there. One of the key things for this is after the 2050 adoption of the MTP, the municipalities' long-range transportation strategy has been adopted. So one of the main things that's going to be done with this is that the update will include a review and revision of the goals and objectives where appropriate with that long-range transportation strategy. And scoring criteria will be updated if significant changes are found. So a call for projects would also happen if significant updates were found. We are going to be putting this out for a 60-day public review. And it's before you to review and recommend to the policy committee. So any questions?
Okay, are there any questions from the committee?
Sorry, real quick, can you state your name?
Oh, sorry, Rhiannon Brown, MTP coordinator with AMATS.
Thank you.
Okay, do you have member questions or comments?
I have a question.
Okay, go for it.
Can you speak to your comment about extending this to 2055, whether that is something that you would like to accomplish here or?
No, our TORA, everything is 2052, so we're going to keep it going as is, but if we find a point that we could easily update to 2055, we're going to potentially look to do that so we don't have the swanky 2052 year in there. That's kind of low-lying fruit.
Okay, other questions or comments? One question that I do have is on the modeling, where you mentioned updating it to the latest available socioeconomic land use and TAZ data. Is that base year, future year, both?
Both. I believe there's a base year and then a future year as well.
And the future year will be the 2052 or the 2055, whatever it changes.
Yeah, I believe it's 2035 and then 2052.
Or like the intermediate.
Yeah.
How about the current, what's the base year?
I don't.
I know that there's the household travel survey also going on currently. Is that going to be done in time to be incorporated into this?
That should be done in time.
The intent is to have that incorporated.
And then this will also look, or we're going to make sure to have the consultants look at any other plans that have been adopted since the 2050 to make sure everything jives.
Okay, any other plans besides like the RTS?
So like if the non-motorized are completed, things like, and then information from the travel survey, so.
Got it. Any other AMATS plans that might be?
Yeah,
completed?
correct.
Okay, thank you. One question I do have for DOT or others, I see on the whereas at lines 41 through 43, it does talk about the LRTS, which is a pretty major new strategy that the municipality has. Are there other DOT items that should be acknowledged? I know I've seen a few different things coming out from DOT with like strategy sorts of things. There's something that this should have. Just wondering whether solely emphasizing LRTS without acknowledging similar strategies on the DOT side. There's opportunity for doing that as well. Anything come to mind?
We are in the process of updating our long-range transportation plan, but I don't know if it'll be done in time for this. So I think they're anticipating to try and get it wrapped up in the next year or two. We might be able to feed drafts and work with you guys on it, but I don't know if we'll have an approved long-range transportation plan. So.
Okay. Does that factor in any suggestions, I guess, from staff on?
So we do have a list of plans in, it was in the RFP to direct consultants, and the state's long range strategy is one of them. So, and we've also put the caveat that should those plans come up to date during it, that they need to be reviewed as well.
Okay. Perfect. Sense. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, any questions or any, I should say, any comments from members of the public? Any members of the public in the room want to make a comment? Okay, I don't see any hands up online right now. So we will move back to what is the will of the committee?
Move to recommend to the policy committee that they approve this resolution as written.
Okay, moved by member Babb, second.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. White. Are there any requested amendments to the resolution? I have one I'd like to make, so
All right.
hand off the gavel to Mr. White again. I'd like to make a motion that under the bullet that says transportation modeling and socioeconomic assumptions, that after what's already written, that it say this includes calibrating the model to the most recent available data and providing a thorough review of recent and projected growth trends to be accounted for. By DOT and MOA planning and traffic staff. I'm open for suggestions on some of that language, but something that emphasizes the importance of that piece.
We have an amendment, a motion for an amendment.
Second.
We need a second.
I'll second.
Okay. Have discussion.
Yeah, so I think it was in the work session, if I recall, there was just the comment about kind of the model, or maybe it was another discussion that I had, just the importance of recognizing with population changes and how much we rely on the model. I know that I personally would benefit from having just a very clear understanding of what the assumptions are that are going into especially, yeah, both the base and the future, so that I can have confidence that the model is really reasonable projection as we compare and look at the guidance that the model is providing, using it as a tool, knowing how to use the tool instead of over-reliance or just black box, which sometimes models can feel like. So. Go ahead.
I might have missed this, but I just want to ask, you said this includes calibrating the model to the most recent data? Did I capture that?
Right.
My only recommendation is maybe say most recent available data, because some people may interpret that as, oh, we need the most recent data, but it's actually not available for public consumption at this time. So I maybe recommend adding that in just to be clear that as long as it's available to us, we would use it.
Yeah, I guess the line right before it does say it will be updated to the latest available data.
Yeah.
So I guess the wording is more to just specify this includes calibration. And maybe a question for staff, was calibration of the model anticipated to be done? Okay, so it's not, that just as a clarification so that it's
Maybe just rewriting it to read a little bit more.
yeah, so I guess, yeah, so including calibration and then also including an opportunity for review. I don't know if it's review by this, like, will that come to the TAC for that review of those details?
Historically, it has, yes. So I anticipate it will in the future as well.
Okay. So maybe, yeah, some like line that talks about calibration and talks about a thorough review of the growth assumptions. So, and I guess I would be open to staff like taking those two ideas and formulating it into the resolution rather than using my exact words.
Okay.
So maybe, does a second agree with that? Okay. Perfect.
All right, any other questions or comments on the amendment? Anyone opposed to the amendment? Not hearing any. All right, amendment's been approved. And back to you, sir.
Okay. Any other requested amendments to the motion? Doing some hot potato.
We're doing it. We're doing business.
Okay. Okay, then we're back onto the motion as amended. Are there any objections to approving the motion as amended? Okay, hearing none, the motion as amended is approved. And definitely looking forward to another NTP update and opportunity to again reimagine Anchorage. So item 5C is next on our agenda, the AMATS BPAC appointment. It looks like this one's Emily's.
Next two are Emily.
Okay, take it away.
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Emily Weiser, and I am the authorized coordinator with AMATS. The Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee currently has 4 seats open. We have had an application, one of those, which is the bicycle organization seat. We've advertised that for a few months now, and did receive that application from someone who's representing Bike Anchorage. Her name is Lynn Keneally, and she is a member of the advocacy committee with Bike Anchorage. Has a long history of public service, both in her professional life and as a volunteer. So we're very excited about that application, and I recommend that you recommend its approval to the policy committee.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Is there are there any questions or comments from the committee? Okay, are there any comments from members of the public? Go ahead, Lindsay.
Hi, this is Heidi again. Speaking as the BPAC chair, just I support the appointment to the BPAC and which is.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Are there any other public comments? If anyone online would like to speak to it, please raise your hand. Okay, see Alexa online. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, Alexa Dobson, Executive Director of Bike Anchorage. We're really happy to have Lynn coming forward to be part of the BPAC, and we think she's going to be a great member of the committee. So we're really hoping that she'll be approved and can kind of hit the ground running, and we can start building out a really good bench of advocates on that committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexa. Are there any other comments from the public, either online or in the room? Okay, seeing none, what is the will of the committee?
Move to recommend approval to the policy committee, BPAC appointee.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Rudolph, seconded by Ms. Babb to recommend approval of Lynn Keneally. Are there any amendments requested? Hearing none, are there any objections to approving the motion? Okay, hearing no objections, that motion is approved. It is great to have someone else stepping forward to become involved, so that'll be great. Next, we'll move on to item 5B, the AMATS BPAC Vision Zero Action Letter. Sounds like that's yours too, Emily.
Me as well. This is Emily Weiser again. Yeah, so at the September 8th meeting of the BPAC, they approved a letter that they would like to send to DOT and PF Central Region, as well as MOA Traffic, as the leaders of the Vision Zero Working Group. This is providing some feedback on the safety actions to date and their concerns with some delays as opposed to the original plan. This letter was unanimously approved by the BPAC members who were present. Was a quorum, and we do have the BPAC chair with us today. If you have any questions or would like to hear more about from the committee on that. And I guess just to clarify, so the other committees like the BPAC and the CAC and the Freight Committee will often send recommendations to you guys and to the Policy Committee on AMATS things. They do also occasionally send letters like this to other recipients that are outside of AMATS. I have a few recent examples of those if anyone's interested in the details of how that's worked in the past. But just to summarize, typically, if the intended recipient of the letter is represented on one of these committees, that representative will recuse themselves from the vote on whether to approve the letter, just because it's a conflict and or kind of awkward to vote on sending a letter to yourself. And then there's kind of three options for how the committees can proceed on this. So you can say, no, we don't recommend this be sent at all. That I think is pretty rare, or maybe hasn't been done in the past, because the idea is for these advisory committees to be able to give voice on these issues that are relevant to them. But that's definitely an option you have. Another option is to say, yes, go ahead and send this from the BPAC to the recipients. And then the third option would be the Technical Advisory Committee could recommend that the Policy Committee essentially become a signatory on the letter or make it their own letter. Or in one recent case, Policy Committee submitted a letter of support of the letter, just to say, you know, this letter is from this committee, support it, we agree with it. But then there's also that middle option of this. You may send this with no indication of agreement or support from the committees. So that hopefully that helps clarify how this kind of process, and any questions on the content or motivation. Hopefully Chair Hydu would be able to speak to that.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Are there any questions or comments from the committee?
I have some questions.
Okay, go for it, Member Bass.
The first question is, can you just maybe provide examples, the names of the entities outside of DOT or the muni that BPAC has sent letters to? Just
Yeah, so in the last few years, there was a resolution sent to the assembly on an assembly ordinance that was being considered at the time. There was also one to the Alaska Department of Public Safety, and that was on Alaska Administrative Code regarding laws or rules of the road for around bicyclists. Also, more recently, the Community Advisory Committee provided a letter on winter maintenance, and that was sent to state legislators, the governor, the DOT commissioner, the DOT Central Region Director. So that was, quite a swath of recipients, semi-similar to the CC list. That answer your question?
yes, thank you. And then the second question would be, you mentioned procedurally that if there is a member of this committee that the letter might be addressed to in some capacity or another, that member would not be voting. But I'm assuming that it would still be all right for that person to provide information, relevant information during the discussion, even if if they end up recusing themselves.
That's
Is that
my
correct?
understanding, and I believe that chair and committee have a say in that also. But yeah, I think if they have relevant information, it's certainly useful to provide that.
Okay, thank you.
And so I will say that I am one of the the one of the I guess who it's directed towards. So I fully, as I read this, understood that I would not be voting on it, but I guess in being able to discuss and understand, it seems like it would be counterproductive for me to not be able to answer questions and comment, and because that in and of itself would be helpful. So I guess as chair, my judgment would be to recuse myself of the vote and the discussion following the public. So this right now where we're doing the comment period and we're having questions and discussion before the motions are happening, that I would be participating, but then after it goes to the committee decision, that I would recuse myself and the gavel off and not be part of that motions and discussions and voting. So that was kind of my intent, given that it's clearly directed towards me and my department. I was kind of not sure exactly from the Central Region DOT side who it would fall to on your side, knowing that really Anna Bozen has been playing the lead on the DOT Central Region kind of leadership for the Vision Zero. But I'd be open to have that conversation if someone on the DOT felt like they were integrated enough with that they needed to recuse themselves too of that voting portion.
Well, I guess maybe it's a terminology thing, but I guess when certain people have recused themselves from different items in the past, some of them have been, recommended they leave the room for this, but I think there's a benefit to Brad staying in and discussing this, and maybe that's an abstaining from the vote, where you're participating in the motion, but you're not voting one way or the other on the what was called.
I was thinking I might go sit in the audience, and that way, I can be here to answer questions. I think is how we've done it in the past when there's been recuse of the vote. Go ahead, Aaron.
When we've done this, we've actually had the member at the beginning recuse themselves and go sit in the audience. So not even for this initial discussion have they been part of it, just to keep it completely clear. Because I believe that's how the muni does it at the beginning for the assembly. They get to an item and they do the vote on whether there's a conflict of interest or not. So we in the past have also done something similar. If there's an apparent conflict of interest, we ask that individual to step aside from the very start. So I would recommend you don't leave the room. I would recommend you do move to the audience at your earliest convenience so you can help answer any questions on this particular item, because that'll keep, I think, the flow going.
Okay, so let's limit discussion right now to who should do that before we have conversation about the content, so that I can lead that portion, but then when it's content related, I'll recuse myself and sit in the audience. So is there anyone else besides me who feels that they're integrated enough that this letter kind of is going to them? So anyone from DOT Central Region that feels like they're integrated that might benefit from recusing themselves. Oh, thoughts, Luke or Ben?
I'll probably join you there, Brett.
Okay. Sounds good. So with that, I will recuse myself and I will pass the gavel off to Mr. White. And it sounds like Luke, confirm you will recuse yourself and ignoring the audience too.
Motion that he recuses himself as well.
Okay. Sounds good. Do we need, like, is that enough just to say that I recuse myself?
We typically ask that you go sit in the audience just because people watch and they don't
I'll just do that right now.
Yeah, just saying that you recuse yourself is good enough.
Okay.
So
I don't need to make any motions or anything or,
you
okay,
can if you really want to, but you're not required to.
okay, I'll just go sit in these meetings.
We don't have to take a vote on it. All right,
Hey, Ben.
great. So now we've got this one in front of us. So we'll open it up for discussion with the committee. Any questions, concerns, issues you want to bring up? Or if someone wants to jump right straight to a motion, I'll that up too.
We can do public comment.
Okay. Any questions, concerns, discussion items?
I think I do have a question for the traffic engineer. If he would be willing to maybe provide some information about some of these items that are noted in the letter, and just fill us in on some of the concerns and the questions from that point of view.
How in depth do you want me to go?
I think a brief summary would be beneficial.
Okay, sounds good. So Brad Coy, municipal traffic engineer. I think the briefest overview is we really want to do all of these items as quickly as we can and have staff limitations and other political limitations to adjust the actuality of transportation projects and work take years. So we've only been in this 1 year, and with the resources we have, we feel that we've accomplished a lot. And the relationship between the municipality and the DOT is strong and moving forward as we have ongoing collaboration. So we also are interested in doing this as quickly as we can, but have very real resource limitations. Just to give an example of, we don't have a Vision Zero coordinator right now. Because the person in that role moved into another role that had been vacant for about 4 years. So, which actually in the action plan was one of the positions we wanted filled. So we completed one action in the action plan, but it left a vacancy in Vision Zero coordinator position itself. So just an example of things that we're up against. I would note that Spinard Road has also had its speed limit reduced. So for that first item, which I think happened on the same day that this letter was dated of September 8th. So that has taken effect on Municipal Road. And I think as far as the rest of them, we are making progress on them. It just either is limited by staff resources or on some of them, like the automated traffic enforcement that takes more a political standpoint decision than something that my department would be able to do on our own. So, and I guess what I'll say too on the last item, the reporting out the crash site visits and findings, we're looking into what additional information can be shared. Part of the value of those is being there in person, getting to see and experience it, trying to document, like how much of it gets documented, how easy it is to document things that can be shared is something that we're looking to, what that would look like. Because being there in person really is what gives a lot of the value of that experience. So we're exploring that as a new request of something that we hadn't previously considered. So still not sure exactly what that looks like, but on the rest of them, things that we would love to do.
Thank you. If the chair is okay with it, I do have,
Yeah, go for it.
just for the, just want to provide DOT with the same opportunity to provide feedback on the letter and their effort.
Sure, Luke Bull, Central Region, Reconstruction Engineer. I think Brad kind of captured it pretty well, but we are working well with the municipality on this Vision Zero goals here. When we came out with the Vision Zero efforts, we did want to have this as an ambitious timeline. We did want to implement things as quickly as possible, with the acknowledgement that we may not get there on the timelines that we originally proposed on this, but we continue to work on speed studies, we continue to look at improvements that we can make. Some of the other, and I think the resourcing constraints, those are real on our end as well. We are getting consultant support. We do have a number of positions that are either going to advertise or hiring freeze hasn't been a challenge for us to a certain degree too. But we can go away from engineering positions, so that's good news in terms of filling some of the vacancies that we have. Some of the general comments that we had, but do appreciate the letter here of holding us accountable and continuing to push us in to make positive changes within our community.
Thank you.
Any other question or comments from the committee? Do we have any questions, comments from the public? I guess I should say comments. We'll start in the room. So.
My name is Stephanie Mormillo. I'm a local civil engineer practicing, also former municipal traffic engineer myself. And just when it comes to the changing of the municipal charter, I wanted to second what Brad said as far as staff being the ones that propose that. That is generally something that happens at the local level. It was something that was proposed in my time as municipal traffic engineer, and it was Assemblyman Dick Trainee who brought it forth. So my recommendation just is, I see that the assembly members are CC'd on this letter, but perhaps reach out to local assembly members to gain support on that idea, because it will have to go to a vote of the people to change the charter of the municipality of Anchorage. So it definitely is more of a political path than really a staff level path. So I just wanted to give my insight on that process because it has been attempted in the past. So.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. Go ahead, Lindsay.
I'm Lindsay Heidi. I serve on the BPAC as the chair and just want to speak really briefly to the intent of the letter. We do have it addressed to, well, we put the departments, but my intention was the traffic engineer and central region director as the signatories for the multi-agency Vision Zero letter. All of these actions that we highlight here, I believe, are all in the action report. These are not things that the BPAC committee made up. We just really looked at what actions are laid out and what we really want to see as a priority and an urgency. Of course, we've already had 11 pedestrians killed on our roads this year, 1 bicyclist, and too many. And so when we talk about transportation and improving safety, we are just trying to hold our community accountable as we allocate resources, as we prioritize projects, really trying to ensure that we are addressing those 5 injury roads and highlighting speed and lane reductions as a way to address it and make some near term improvements where we could separate or have more of a buffer with sidewalks and things like that with high-speed traffic. So these there are many actions in the action report, and we want to see them all happen. And again, it's just highlighting that as we're heading into these dark months and we're reflecting and having our kind of 6 months reports and having those addressed, just really trying to continue to highlight the urgency of these actions. Really push for the prioritization of the things that we're implementing beyond studies to have some real on-the-ground changes in the community. So we put this letter together and talking with different BPAC members, and then had that opportunity to have feedback during the meeting as well. But again, just really trying to keep this top of mind for everybody who's making decisions when it comes to transportation in our community, because I believe these are public lands, and how we allocate and how we serve our community really matters. So just appreciate taking the time, having a productive and collaborative relationship with the Department of Transportation and the municipality to move this forward. And I think to have citizens continue to urge and work together to have the solutions in our neighborhoods as well. So appreciate the time and the thought that goes here, but also again, just keep putting fine point on we're in a crisis right now and we have to do better.
Thank you. Any other comments in there?
This is Daniel McKenna Foster, Long Range Planning. I'm going to give a presentation a little bit about the Transport Development Corridor, but I will say in the last few months, we've done almost 20 meetings, a lot of outreach to the public. One thing that comes up at almost every meeting is people complaining about the roads being unsafe. Ours is a zoning project, and we tell them this is a matter of right of way. So I think I would just add that to this. We've heard from so many people who they're coming, we're there, and they're asking us to solve their problem or find a solution to it. And a lot of times we say a lot of this is an issue with the way the road is designed and the way the enforcement is happening. But we have heard a lot of concern about this kind of thing in the number of meetings we've been doing. Sad that.
Thank you. Any other comments in there?
Yeah, we're doing it.
We've got one online.
Yes. Alexa.
Thank you, Alexa Dobson, Executive Director of Bike Anchorage. This is a really fantastic letter, and we're really happy that the BPAC is moving this forward. We would encourage the Technical Advisory Committee to co-sign and support in the strongest possible terms to continue this moving forward. We're also working on our own It's Been 1 Year, What's Happened letter that will be forthcoming. But I do think that from Bike Anchorage's perspective, we would like to put a little bit of a finer point on the concern with this letter specifically around road diets, where I believe this letter recommends that we immediately implement the HSIP road diets that are already programmed. I would ask that we add to that a request to DOT that they immediately remove the Chief Engineer's directive that impedes our ability to implement those road diets. It is not necessary. It is a waste of funds. It is a waste of time, and people are actively being killed on our roads. We cannot afford more analysis paralysis. To the point that Mr. Coy made earlier, talking about the challenges of addressing these enormous and systemic problems with limited staff. I do recognize that is a very real concern, and I hope that city and state resources are being moved appropriately to prioritize filling those types of roles. And while I am loath to say the people who are working in these agencies should just work harder, it does seem to me that rather than perhaps siloing Vision Zero programming and activities into one person or one department, it may make more sense and improve the uptake of these programs if we consider every member of the traffic engineering department in the municipality and every member of DOT Central Region for the state as having Vision Zero be a specific and enumerated priority among all of their other job description. That is something that we have in our long-range transportation strategy for the city, is that every project is a safety project. And I would like to see that every traffic engineer, every project manager is a safety engineer and a safety manager. If it is indeed, not going to be practical to staff an individual person to move these projects forward, then we really do need to reassess where those resources are going right now and where our priorities are to make safety the top priority. I think I might be at time, so I'll wrap up there. But thank you for this. I really hope that we can move this forward and see some good progress.
Thank you. Any other comments online?
Don't see anybody else.
Okay. I can't see Brad's screen. It's getting old. All right. What is the will of the committee?
I will move to recommend approval to the policy committee this letter, while also recommending that they become either a signatory or provide a letter of support.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
I would just like to say that I'm supporting this, and I seconded that motion because, well, I absolutely, from the inside the municipality, recognize the challenges that staff in the municipality and DOT face in achieving these goals. I think it is valuable to keep these goals at the top of everyone's minds, and 11 deaths in the municipality this year is not normal for a city our size, and it should not ever become normal. So I'm supporting this.
I just note that I think we have these advisory committees for a reason. I appreciate when they come up with these letters. Well, personally, I don't think an advisory committee should be sending a letter on their own to anybody outside of AMAT. So that's why I included that they need to have the support of the policy committee in order to do this.
Other questions, concerns, comments? Anyone object to the amendment as proposed? Okay. Hearing no objections, motion has moved, and we can invite our chair back up to the we're going to hand you back the gavel, sir.
Okay, little did you realize how active you'd be today.
That's a good thing I showed up.
Okay, thank you for taking that on, Mr. White. We are now moving on to the informational items. Item 6A, the MOA Transit Supportive Development Overlay, TSDO. We will be taking that.
So be Daniel has a presentation for you.
Okay, go for it, Daniel.
Hi, Dana McKenna Foster, Long Range Planning. I am sharing it. I don't see it on the screen yet. Does anybody? Oh, there's like, okay, perfect. So I'll just give a brief overview, and I'm grateful for the chance to provide it. This is the Transit Support Development Overlay. You may have heard about it. It is a zoning reform to implement the 2020 and 2040 plans. And really, this is an interesting piece because it really does tie land use and transportation together. So I'll just give a little bit of an overview of where we've been and where we're going and where things stand out. So the Transport Development Overlay is an idea that was originally proposed in 2020, and then it was really enshrined in 2040. And what you'll see here is these are all images from 2040. This is the type of development that was envisioned in the 2040 plan. These are all part of the adopted plan. This is what people are thinking, that in the future, Anchorage will have more development like this. And this will be the kind of development that supports transit, but it's also more than transit. It's about supporting more walkability, different types of transportation choices. So we've done a lot of outreach, and people have said, well, is it about transit? Is it about housing? It's kind of about everything. And you can see that in the text of the 2040 land use plan, but it's just called a transit supportive development overlay. Just fundamentally, the concept is that if we build up more housing along these corridors, it both strengthens transit, makes it more human-centered city and that sort of thing. So just to repeat, these are PC planning and zoning cases 2025-30 and 2025-34. You can look at that on City View and all the materials. So as I mentioned, to get the lag right. So this idea has been in the plan since 2001. In 2001, the 2020 plan, which is our main comprehensive plan, came up with these ideas of transit supportive corridors where we would focus development. And that you'll see on this map on the left, those sort of orange lines. Those were the initial ideas back then. And then in 2017, we adopted the 2040 land use plan, which fleshed them out and actually mapped them specifically. So there were some big ideas going on back then, and a lot of, we spoke with the old planning director actually who did the 2020 plan recently. And she told us, like, a lot of this came out of analysis, right? So there was a lot of work that went on to come up with this idea and make the idea viable. And I think it's interesting, I'm just going to reference here, this is the 2012 Anchorage housing market analysis. And this talks about the problems with Anchorage in 2012, so about 12, 13 years ago. And it's talking about, well, what's going to happen in Anchorage in the next 10 years. And they talk about some different scenarios, some different things to do. And one of the things they mention is that depending on if we change and we really change Anchorage to have tri-new neighborhood development, we might see some changes. And one of those changes might be more people locating in the region, but outside the Anchorage bowl. And that is kind of what's happened. And we'll see a little bit here. So the 2040 land use plan established transit support development corridors and said, these are the corridors where expanded public transit service will support a compact, walkable pattern of commercial, residential, and or mixed use development. Over time, compact development can create ridership demand to support more frequent bus service. So it really was, let's do it. We'll see, over time, this will be a gradual thing. We'll get some changes. And to go a little bit further, the idea of focused development, targeted development was a big theme and a strategy of 2040. There were a lot of ideas in there that said, we have limited resources. We'll probably continue to have limited resources. Let's focus those in key areas. Another big concept of that plan was the concept of the reinvestment focus area. You'll see here that blue line, that's where the transport development was going to go along Spinard, along Chugach Way was going to be this sort of focused development. Makes a lot of sense. When you have any big project like this, you've got to get P&E in the room, planning in the room, DOT in the room, private property owners in the room, get the treasury in the room, figure out what are all the pieces to make this work as we redevelop some of these big pieces of land or we redevelop a road. Because when we're investing in that road, we're also sort of hoping that that investment will spur additional investment. So these are the ideas kind of setting up in 2017. In moving forward, we're really going to focus in development, focus investment. Transport development is part of that. It's focusing on zoning, right? So here we are 7 to 8 years later, and just looking at what has happened. And as we all know, a lot of the growth didn't happen in Anchorage. A lot of the growth did actually go to the Mat-Su because a lot of things really changed in the past 10 years or so. And so in a second here, you'll see it's the forces and trends report from the Matanuska-Sioux Borough. And they mention here in that fourth paragraph, most new residents moving to the Mat-Su into the borough, 25,000 net, had lived in Anchorage for at least 1 full year immediately prior to moving to the Mat-Su. So I said this all these, some people, they want to move to the Mat-Su, great. But there are probably some of those people who would have preferred to stay in Anchorage and keep their trips in Anchorage, keep their money in Anchorage, keep their housing in Anchorage, but maybe didn't have the chance to do that. And so they made the choice to go somewhere else. So we have seen that. It's kind of, this was predicted in 2012, and this is what we've seen. And so about 28% commute to Anchorage. So this has pretty big implications, right? Mat-Su has maybe cheaper housing costs, or has traditionally. Those costs are not as cheap anymore. But anybody living in Mat-Su who's coming to Anchorage, 28% of people, that is a huge transportation cost that we're all bearing, right? We're bearing that on our roads. We have people driving through. We have more people who are making longer trips. All of that cost gets borne by all of us. And part of that has to do with the way we've planned and developed the city. So just to repeat again, these two cases are PCC case 2025-30 and PCC case 2025-34. And these are going to the Planning and Zoning Commission next week, October 6th. That'll be the third meeting that has seen these. And this comes at the end of as I mentioned in my comment just now, about 20 meetings, most of them public meetings, talking to people about this. We're sending out a newsletter, but it's also been in the plans for over 20 years. So the idea has been there. People have been supporting it. When the municipality and the assembly were working on the home initiative last year, one big thing we heard is focused development, follow the plans. So this is what it looks like, following the plans, focusing development within the boundaries basically that were established in 2017. So this is an example of all the outreach we're doing. Going to Campbell Creek tonight, we spent about 2 hours at University area talking last night. There's been a lot of dialogue on this. We'll go to the planning, the Peace Policy Committee if we're invited. We'd love to go there. And so we continue to, anytime anybody wants to talk about it, we are glad to go and talk about that. So now you're thinking, well, where is it? Where does it apply? This next map, it shows where TSDO was originally and where TSDO is now. So when it was first proposed, it went to the July 14th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And that was a pretty big map. That map was based on the multifamily tax incentive bonus area, which I will emphasize is still in effect. The tax incentives are part of Chapter 12. This does not touch anything in Chapter 12. So those tax incentives as written in code, this project would not touch anything with that. Just initially, it made a lot of sense to align those. So if you're getting the tax incentive, we're also making sure that the land use restrictions or regulations are not restricting the possibility to make the most of that. So you'll see on this map, and this map is available to everybody. If you go to the website, you click on the maps, there's a couple links to it. Everybody can get to this so you can zoom in and see what the precise boundaries are right now. So gray is where it was in July, green is where it is today. And that has come out of, basically several rounds of public feedback and other sort of guidance we've got. So that's where we are. And the green, it basically comes down to, it's the 2040 land use plan, the original corridors has been published on the online map for 7 or 8 years, except everything south of International excluded. And then Tudor Road and Muldoon Road, 1/4 mile off of both those roads. So any parcels that fall in those, and downtown is also. So those are the places where this initiative, if it passed, would apply. So then now you're thinking, well, what does it actually allow? An overlay can be restrictive or it can be more permissive. This overlay is generally more permissive. And so it basically, there's no minimum lot size, there's no minimum lot width. Lot coverage is allowed up to 80%. Currently, in most zones, it's 40% or less. Some you get up to 60 with a townhouse. And no setbacks, and maximum height is 40. Now, when we started, the maximum height was 75. There was a bunch of mixed uses. I think lot coverage may have been 100%. So it's been really pared down from the beginning. And so 40 feet is about 3 stories. Maybe it could be 4 stories with really narrow little floors, but that's generally about 3 stories. So it's about 10 feet, 1 story more than is currently allowed in most residential zones. It's actually interesting. And, if you go further south, the heights are allowed to be 35 feet, like 6 or 7. So it's really not much of a change in many ways. And I also mentioned that zoning is a ceiling, it's not a floor. So just because it says 0 lot width required 80% map, that doesn't mean that everybody will build to that. It's really just saying this is the possibility, the buildable envelope, knowing that on every lot, there's probably going to be something else. For example, AWU does not like any lots that are narrower than 30 feet. So it doesn't matter if there's a width minimum width required here or there. And we got a question last night. Well, we want the zoning code to inform us. Why doesn't that tell us that? And our answer is that, well, we don't want to duplicate regulations because we want our regulations to have a clear rationale, a clear connection to health, safety, welfare. And what we're doing here is we're trying to, we don't want to produce a rule that isn't solving a clear problem, right? So if AWU is solving that problem, they might solve it a different way. We don't want that to be stuck here. Also in our code, many times the rules have just been copied over. One piece changes, the links don't work anymore, and it becomes really, really complicated where there's no longer that sort of simple connection. And the same with setbacks, right? Just because 0 feet, it doesn't mean, one big thing is fire code still applies. You cannot build 2 buildings next to each other without adequate fire protection or fire separation. Sometimes that's setback, sometimes it's a thick wall. I'm including this next slide really just as a reference. It's a little complex to go through, but basically you'll see in a moment. On the left is what was in the original version, and on the right is the version that the Planning and Zoning Commission is looking at. So some things have changes. Actually, the lot size did get reduced to no minimum lot size, but again, there's probably always going to be a minimum lot size just based on the widths that AWU will allow or what is actually buildable. But lot coverage reduced, heights reduced. The first version talked a lot about mixed uses, non-residential uses, coffee shops or clinics or that sort of thing. We heard a lot of support. People saying we want more, but also a lot of opposition to that too. The decision was made that would be a part of a separate ordinance. It just got a little bit too complicated. So right now, and I think that ordinance is out there, but right now we're asking PCC to look at this and some changes to the comprehensive plan. Because that's another thing too, is the comprehensive plan, the way it's written, actually doesn't really allow the implementation of TSDO, of the overlay. Interestingly enough, talking to the former planning director from the early 2000s, she said that at that time, the comprehensive plan said, in the transported development overlay, it should be minimum of 8 dwelling units per acre density. In the current plans, it says up to 8 dwelling units per acre. And anybody here familiar with transit knows 8 dwelling units per acre is really not going to get you much transit. It's not going to get you just much activity, right? So there's a lot of pieces in that where that's why we have a few little tweaks to the 2040 plan, proposed changes, so everything remains aligned. This next slide is just looking at the 2040 land use transportive corridors as shown in the 2040 land use plan, the adopted plan and what's been online. And where you see the parcels, that's where the parcels exist now. So Sand Lake, the whole Jewel Lake was removed, a lot of Lake Otis was removed, and some of the area down leading up to Diamond, Abbott, that sort of area. Another thing too is people have asked, well, we'd like to look at how does this compare to seismic, or is it focusing density in the right places? And this map, and I'm sorry I don't have a key on there, but everywhere it's green, that means low seismic risk. Everywhere that's orange or red, that means higher seismic risk. So again, we're starting from 2040. 2040 didn't necessarily align with that, but a lot of these corridors do actually align with areas where it makes sense to develop in just in terms of the way what's in the ground, right? And so this really is looking at a lot of different things. It's looking at where do we have goods and services? Where do we have existing transportation? Where does it make sense to build? And you'll see here, so everything in red, those are the bus routes with curb bus routes at 15-minute capacity. We did look at a version that said, well, let's just build along the 15-minute routes, right? Because there are a lot of parts on this map where it make a lot of sense to allow more housing. Good soil, great connectivity, excellent access. The plans, 2040 plan did not. So right now we're back at where the 2040 plan started. So next steps, public hearing at the October 6, 2025 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. That'll be the third time BPC has heard this. Materials and data are available on the TSDO webpage, CityView portal. Subscribe to our newsletter. We're sending out all of it as soon as we have it, as soon as we post it. Because that's something else we heard, is that we sent everything to the community councils in June, and people still said, I didn't hear from council, so I didn't know about it. So we're trying to address it and say, let us give you the information as soon as we have it. Correct. So thank you. If you have got to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. I recognize that we have about 12 minutes left in our meeting. Before we dive into questions too much, I'm curious from Aaron, as you look at these information items, to extend or see about extending, do we need to recognize that we look at some of these?
I think with the time available, I don't think there's enough to get through the rest of the items. So it may be that we need to move them to another meeting. I can see if DOT will be available at a later time in November to talk about the STIP update in the lane reductive directive. I apologize for the DOT people who showed up to talk about it. And then the local lens, we can just send an email about it to the committee members and let you know. So it gives more time to ask any questions for TSDO and have that engagement since it's here.
I would actually like to move to extend at least 15 minutes to start, just because I would like to hear the STIP update. The rest of the committee is up for that.
Okay, we have a motion to extend and a seconded moved by member Babb and seconded by member Bolin.
How long?
15 minutes.
Okay.
To 3:15. Any objections to the motion? Okay, hearing none, the meeting is extended. So we'll now dive into if there's any questions or comments regarding TSDO. Ideally keeping it brief so we can move to the other ones, but also recognize if there are questions or comments, we don't want to limit them as well. So any questions or comments on TSDO? Go ahead.
I saw on there that the Tudor curve is part of it. there's currently no transit on a curve, pull up on Patterson and over. There will probably never be transit on that curve because there's limited sight distance. It's too fast. You can't cross the street at that point. And I know you mentioned that everything was within a fourth of a mile of transit. So the south side of that curve is not within a fourth of a mile of transit. Was there any consideration on that?
Yeah, through the chair, I might have misspoke. I said fourth of mile transit, fourth of mile at the center line of Tudor and Wolfen. That was direction from the sponsors. Really, because in the first version, we spent a lot of time looking at specifics of where it makes sense. I think the bus actually goes on Patterson, right? So that would make more sense.
Yeah.
Honestly, it got to the point where it became so difficult that we ended up with, let's stick with this, and then a quarter mile off we'll do it in Tudor. But you'll see in our request to the commission next week, as we said, give us direction if you want us to sort of calibrate the boundaries a little bit more, because there are other places where it'll be one building on, one lot on the street, and then across the street it isn't. So in the first round, we went through and we spent a lot of time looking at this. This is all in R3 zone. It's all contiguous. This makes sense. This maybe doesn't make sense because there's already a natural barrier there. On this one, it was just sort of like, this is the direction. So yeah, we have heard that comment. It's a great comment. And it's really just plugging into the computer, what is a quarter mile off of the center. But we have requested guidance from planning and zoning, but also take that comment as well.
Other questions or comments?
It's a question / comment, Daniel. It appears that this version of TSDO that it brought forward seems to be a little watered down from the original version, based on feedback from whoever. Is this new version still going to help us achieve some of the things that are called out in long-range transportation strategies, the 2040 land use plan? Now, I'll be honest, from my position, we use the information that you guys develop, and TSDO would be no exception to that, in our efforts for the TIP and the MTP. And when we hear from the committees and the community that they want to see changes in mode shift and other things like that. And then this comes along, it's really robust to help us get that mode shift change, and then seems to have just been not really that useful, I'll be honest, in my opinion. But maybe you can speak. Is this useful? Is this going to still get us to those mode shifts that are listed in the LRTS?
Well, I'll leave some space for the director to speak as well. But from my perspective, it is really different from what it was originally. And again, we're trying to allow for the realm of possibilities, knowing that we have no idea what should or like what is possible. But in our daily work, we hear from all the time that there's always a bunch of little pieces here and there. And so in developing this, initially we thought, let's try to remove as much of those little pieces of friction and allow a lot of flexibility, knowing that most cases people are never going to build to full extent. What we have presented and we're bringing to planning and zoning, and also see in our recommendations, we say, we think this is probably the bare minimum to get somewhere. And beyond this, then we should really be having a bigger conversation about, is this 20-year-old, are we actually going to do this 20-year-old idea? I mean, just this week, and I mentioned this last night, I've heard about 4 projects where multiple 6-plexes, a couple of 4-plexes, 24 units that were in the initial TSDO. And I think they're working under that tax payment, are now no longer in it, right? And so it did seem to have produced a result and get us to where because we have a number of goals. We have transit, we also have our housing goals. So it's reduced, there's less flexibility. And so every time you reduce that flexibility, there are more variables that can constrict the development. That's additional insight on.
Thank you. I think you did cover the answer to that question pretty well. In summary, if there are any further reductions to the dimensional standards or the dwelling units per acre or any of the other pieces of this ordinance, leaving aside the map, any adjustments to the map, then I think the planning department would need to start exploring alternative ways to meet the need for housing in the community and meet the mayor's goal for 10,000 homes, and also meet the LRTS goals for mode shift. So yeah, I think we're at that point where we would be considering recommending to the Planning and Zoning Commission or the Assembly, whoever's hands had it in hand, that they should not move this forward if it does end up changing much more in that direction.
I'll say from my perspective, and I'm speaking, not the rest of AMAT staff, if it gets reduced much more, it's not going to be very useful for us for the MTP or TIP because it doesn't actually change anything to the system. And so the types of projects that you see coming forward, we're going to do our best to recommend it, but it can't be just AMATs doing everything. And by AMATs, I mean, you know, transportation side of things, because that includes DOT and things for that one. So I hope everybody who's commenting on this effort realizes that if we want fundamental change, can't shy away from these kind of things. So thank you. I'll leave it.
Okay, other questions or comments from the committee? Are there any public comments?
Rhiannon Brown, AMAT. Why were A and C removed? It seemed like that was sort of an important piece of it.
I guess what was originally, the hard purple outline is what's in original 2040. So I think it's why weren't parts of those included in original 2040. It's just sort of why.
Okay, it looks like we have two hands. We'll go Nancy and then Anna. We got 3 minutes.
Yes. Thank you. This is Nancy, just commenting on my own behalf. Aaron asked a really important question. Will this get us to the mode shift? And that is a question I've been asking. What rate of growth and what number of units of housing will it take to get this area to the transit densities that are targeted of 25 to 36 DUA? How long will that take? If this is an area that will take 25 or 35 or 50 years to fill in, then I question whether it's really getting us to the mode shift. I still haven't seen any data on how the current growth rates what rate the current growth rates will allow any part of this to fill in. And I'm thinking that the area of this should be calibrated in part by a desire to fill in some of these routes relatively quickly, both because we want to make that transportation shift, but also because neighborhoods that are in transition tend to undergo some amount of uncertainty and disinvestment while that shift is taking place. So just to recap, can we have the numbers that show us which of these areas are close to 25 to 36? And how quickly will those areas or the whole area reach those thresholds and really where people will really definitely switch over to transit? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Anna, you'll have 3 minutes for your comments.
Yeah, thanks. Anna Boson, just commenting as a member of the public, but there was a recent discussion with past CEO of WashDOT, Roger Millar, where he's really emphasizing that safe land use is like the sixth cog in the safe systems approach to transportation. And so I'm really supportive of TSDO. I'd like to see this implemented. I would like to see, once it is implemented or adopted, that we work together closely as agencies, because access management is going to be really necessary here, as well as addressing some backage connections and lower stress connections for people on many of these arterial roads. And so we'll have to do some further work on trying to create alternative non-motorized connectivity, I guess, in order to realize this, since many of the corridors are on DOT routes. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Anna. And Alexa, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Alexa Dobson, Executive Director of Bike Anchorage. Bike Anchorage isn't advocating on or taking a position on the TSDO, but I do want to observe that the map overlay as we see it here looks a lot like our high crash network. And if we were to, compare this to where pedestrians have recently been killed, we see a lot of overlap there. And I think that it's important to have conversations like this, thinking about the TSDO and other land use concerns, because they do intersect so significantly with transportation and transportation safety. So I would hope that in the areas that we are considering for upzoning with the intention of having more pedestrians and more bicyclists able to move around in those areas, that we aren't putting those people in the places that are specifically the most dangerous to them. Looking along those sections of Muldoon, we've seen a lot of pedestrians unfortunately killed by drivers in that area, along Tudor, down near the Northern Lights and Minnesota areas. These are state-owned roads. These are roads that are, the ones that are the most dangerous for people who are walking and biking. And obviously, Bike Anchorage wants a city where more people can get around on foot or on bike and don't have to drive everywhere. But we have to make sure that we are creating roads that are safe to do that. Otherwise, we're creating situations that are just going to perpetuate this traffic violence. So again, I will reiterate that we ask DOT to immediately rescind that directive that inhibits the implementation of road diets, and we ask for immediate implementation of the existing HSIP road diets, and we ask for immediate reprioritization of our funding at the state and at the local levels to prioritize safety and create roads where people are not killed when they're out, going to visit a friend or going to get groceries. Land use is a really important part of this. Where we're focusing our density matters. But if all we wind up doing is putting more people in harm's way, then we're really not doing the community the service that it needs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alexa. Any other public comments? Okay, there's no action item on this. Hopefully, with staff here, you can take the comments that were provided and be able to either reach out to them directly or incorporate them as you can. So thanks for coming and presenting. We will now move on to information item 6B, DOTPF lane reduction directive overview. Who will be presenting on that?
That'll be Lauren Little from DOT if she's still on and available.
I
If
am.
not, okay, great. Thank you.
Yep,
Take it
thanks,
away,
Aaron.
Lauren.
Yeah, I'll jump to C real quick because I did hear a desire for the STIP update as a key reason for extending. Right now, we're still on track for our October 16th public comment period. Hoping to get on technical and policy agendas for the various MPOs during that 45-day public comment period. Our project delivery plan updates, managers should have completed those September 16th. And so now we're just working through the project program lists and fiscal constraint balancing in support of that public comment period start. So I'll pause there if there's any questions on STIP.
Okay, any questions on the STIP item? Okay, go ahead on 6B.
Okay, lane reduction, Chief Engineer's Directive. I guess I'm really more here to answer your questions, but just at a very high level, I think there's been a lot of misinformation around what this document is and its impacts on projects. I've heard in multiple avenues that this is something that prevents projects from starting. And I want to be really clear that the chief engineer's directive is simply an analysis requirement before selecting a preferred alternative. It does not dictate an outcome. It does not need to be completed. The analysis does not need to be completed before a project is started. And so I would encourage folks that haven't to take a look at that directive. It is available on our website. And ultimately, the goal of this was to ensure that these projects, which can often become very controversial with the public, have the analysis and information available that our PI teams and our project teams can adequately defend them to the public, ensure that we have project consent and we don't end up with a project that gets stopped at the 11th hour when folks rally against what they perceive as potential impacts to their daily commute. And so that was really the background behind this. We have in our highway pre-construction manual design standards for new construction projects, what we call rehabilitation projects, as well as highway safety improvement program projects. But there's a gap for these sort of niche projects that technically they would be considered a reconstruction project because we are significantly modifying the cross-section, but that's not clear in our manuals. And so this directive is ultimately just filling a gap to ensure that these are receiving the same analysis and the same process that we would need to do for something that would be expanding the capacity of a highway. So I'll pause there. And I did also drop in the chat. If folks want to reach out, I'm happy to talk one-on-one through where this thing came from, how we got to what it looks like today, and ultimately the things that we're doing in implementing this moving forward, such as hiring a traffic and safety term consultant to help the regions if they need it, with making sure this analysis gets done and doesn't slow up the ultimate project delivery.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? One question that I did have as I was looking through the directive is one of the requirements is that the level of service not be degraded. It gives an example of like moving from C to D. If, you know, I guess one area that I was concerned about is if we have a street that's level of service A right now, or level of service B, ideally that means that there's lots of capacity. So is that directive intending that if reducing a lane moves it from B to C or A to B, that is sufficient degradation that it cannot move forward with a lane reduction, or is that a misinterpretation on my part?
I can see how it would read that way. And just to be clear, that is only on National Highway System routes. And so I want to be clear that none of the criteria for recommendation bullets, so, we have that statement, in addition to the matrix, these things will generally not be permitted on DOT owned or managed roads. Again, those are warnings, right? Those are warnings to the project team that these things could bring about a level of controversy or impact to the overall system that may, as a department, be untenable. It doesn't mean that you can't take an NHS route to E, for example. It just means you're going to have a higher bar of explaining that to leadership and to the public so that we have a real clear understanding of the decision to pursue that lane reduction or road diet approach. None of these things ultimately preclude a project or the selection of a preferred alternative. They're simply elevating to the decision-making team that these are things that require maybe a little bit more thinking and assessment. Now, certainly in A to B, the design standard for an arterial and an urban environment is D or better for AASHTO. So yes, that would be an easy in your memo. Yes, it degrades, but it doesn't increase the corridor by 2 minutes or more, or even if it does, it's still well within acceptable standards for traffic level of service. That would just simply be what you'd put in your memo. And I wouldn't foresee that raising any concerns, but it is something that we often do have to communicate to the public. here in Fairbanks, we had a project several years ago where adding 28 seconds of travel time in a, 3 or 5 mile corridor, I can't remember now, was just an absolute firestorm. And so we just want to make sure that project teams are armed with the answers to those questions. Yep, it is going to increase this, but here's what else it's doing. That's what we want this directive and this consistent analysis to be able to arm teams with, so that they can face those firestorms if and when they occur.
So going from A to B or B to C does not preclude it from having the lane drop. Am I understanding that right?
Absolutely correct.
Also, one other comment. Have you looked at Anchorage's NHS, what are currently designated as NHS routes?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
When you talk about the NHS routes, and that only applies to those, just curious if you've looked at what's designated as NHS in Anchorage.
So this directive applies statewide. It's not intended to target a specific region. It's simply the NHS mention on that bullet number 2 is simply a recognition that the NHS serves a statewide and national priority, and therefore it has a little bit higher analysis bar to explain impacts to.
I guess it's a leading question. I mean, pretty much all of Anchorage's arterials are NHS. Almost every road that's DOT, and even lots of city roads are, I'm not sure why, are NHS in Anchorage. So just something that if there's willingness to reconsider what truly should be NHS in Anchorage, that would be very, very appreciated.
So that is something that the MPOs have the ability to request of DOT. But I will also just remind everyone that the NHS designation does make those roads eligible for a different pot of money. And I believe also comes with a different match requirement that is ultimately beneficial overall to our funding program.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Okay, we are close to time. Is there any interest in extending, or do we wrap up?
Move to adjourn.
Okay, so we can wrap up. So thank you, Lauren, for coming and sharing. If there are any members of the public, we have 1 minute basically before we adjourn at 3:15. Any members of the public in the room that would like to make comments? Any members online? Looks like we have one. You are limited, Alexa, to 1 minute, if you would, please.
Thank you, Alexa Dobson, Bike Anchorage. Yeah, and I'll be as fast as possible. I do think that Mr. Coy addressed a lot of the things that I was thinking as I was listening to this description of the road diet directive. NHS routes in Anchorage are the vast majority of the sites where pedestrians have died in traffic violence this year and the year prior. I also wanted to highlight that level of service is not a safety metric, and it does not take into consideration any perspective other than that of the driver of a private automobile. The difference between a level of service C and D, which was used as an example there at a signalized intersection, would be the difference of a wait time of 34 seconds versus 36 seconds. The reason why we object to level of service being considered in this way is because it prioritizes driver convenience over the lives of people who have been dying on our streets. We cannot and we must not codify driver convenience over saving lives on our streets. So again, we reiterate that this is an unnecessary policy, that the analysis—
I'm gonna have to stop you, Alexa.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay,
and So before I adjourn, I realized I did not mention that Mr. White arrived at 1:04, so let the record show. He did arrive so that it's in the documentation. And it is 3:15, so we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.